Okay, so as you heard in the intro, I just have this little loop that I put together, um, and I don't think I got it like perfect. Like this doesn't sound exactly like Flying Lotus, but I think I got close enough that I can explain some techniques to you, and hopefully you can learn something from it, and maybe you can get closer. But definitely, I think this is a good jumping off point, and I think I got a few of the like main things down. So the first thing I want to talk about is the sort of like vinyl noise. Obviously, if you've watched my other videos, you know I'm never much of a stranger to this. But what I did here was, instead of using cassette noise like I usually use, here I use these two samples of noise from like records, like vinyl or whatever. Hence vinyl dirt. You have to forgive me, my computer's moving a little bit slow for whatever reason. But I put them both together, and they sound pretty good together. But I was listening to a lot of his music, and it sounds like he's using multiple layers of this stuff at once in a lot of his tracks. So I just have this one, and then this one. So those two together sound like this. And essentially, what that does is just provides a bed for all of the other instruments to sort of sit on, or lay on, I suppose. And yeah, it's just that's just sort of like the foundation that I started on, and then I built everything off of that. The next thing I will cover is the drums, which sound like this. And what that is this shaker. Let me solo everything on its own. Yeah, it's the shaker. This clap, which is 3 claps layered together. This kick. And then this Foley noise. Or Foley, I don't know. So, essentially, the shaker and the clap are pretty straightforward. I just have this regular shaker. But if you see, I took it off the grid. Let me zoom back in. I took it off the grid, and I, whatever it's called, I moved it forward a little bit so it sort of grooves more. It's like I said, it has a bit more groove this way. It just kind of flows nicer than when it was just on the thing, and it sort of sits over top of everything nicely. The snare is pretty straightforward. I just have I guess it's 4 layers together. And if you see, none of them are perfectly on the beat. But they're all sort of like close, and they're all moving around each other in a way that makes this very sort of human sounding clap, because you get that that really like loose kind of like, sounds like a bunch of people clapping in a room. There's also the Foley noise, but and then there's also a snare in there. And these are all just sounds from like some pretty straightforward hip-hop sample packs that I found on the internet. Same with the kick. Not much to say about that. It's just, again, from like, you just want to look for sort of like old school hip-hop sample packs. Especially like when they have drums sampled from vinyl. That's pretty good. That's what these all sound like. But yeah, the kick is the same thing. It's just not on the grid. And that's what's really important here, and that's what I want you to take away from this video, is that the drums being on the grid tends to not really work for this. I mean, obviously it's on the grid in some way because it's like not just completely free, but it's like it's off the grid while being like still a loop, if that makes any sense. And you know, the way you do that is you just right click and turn off the grid here, and then you just start moving stuff around slightly. That's what I did. I built like the patterns, and then took them off the grid to give them like the human feel. So the next thing I have is this Folly sound loop, and that sounds like this. I'll start it from the beginning. So what that is basically just it was this recording. Let me do show in browser and I'll show you the original. It was this recording I had of myself. I think I was spinning like a fidget spinner or something. I don't know what it was. It was like a fidget spinner on some table or something, and I recorded it on my phone. And then I just kind of took it, and it was cool because it has the background noise like in these parts, but it also has the clicks. So I just sort of took it and put it in a way that suited the groove of the drums. Like if I play them all together. And this is like something I think I really nailed as far as the Flying Lotus sound goes. Is he does stuff like this a lot. I mean, people will tell you, oh, use Folly sounds, use found sound. And a lot of people don't really get it. Not to throw shade, I'm just saying. But I think this is really important. You want to use these sort of like percussion sounds that are maybe not so like orthodox in the sense of like they're not like, this isn't a percussion from a sample pack. But it suits the groove nicely, and if you see, none of these hits are really on the grid either, but they fit the groove, and that's what matters. That's really not much I can say about that, though. You really just want to start chopping and, get into it. And you'll have all these samples to play with, because obviously I'm going to include the project file. But after that, I want to show you this this sample loop that I made. Now, this is sort of not original. I basically recreated the sample loop from Massage Situation by Flying Lotus. I'll have it in the description. And like I said, this whole project file and samples will be in there as well. But that sounds like this. And essentially the way that I did that was, the sample is this Singer's Unlimited Nature Boy. You can find it on Who Sampled. What I did was, this will drag over, I made, so I took the original track. The original sounds like this. I don't know. Okay, so the original sounds like this. Let me unwarp this, undo that, and so it's pretty much like this passage where you take everything from for this. And so what I did was I took this first part. I'm actually just going to go back to the way I had this. But yeah, so I took that first part, and then there was this part. And what I did was, so I pitched them up 2 semitones, and I used the fades to sort of blend them together, because when you don't, it just kind of sounded sort of, it didn't really blend properly. But the reason why I'm explaining this is to show you, like, part of what makes Flying Lotus so good, and like this kind of music so good, is like his ability, and I guess other people's ability, to like hear samples and do like cool creative things with them. That's really like, a lot of people wouldn't hear this, that passage I played you, and imagine this loop out of it, but here it is, and it sounds really cool. So that's really like the thing I can tell you is like, find the sources. If you're digging for samples, find the sources that other people have used, like, Flying Lotus or Jay Dilla, and not necessarily the songs that they've sampled, but like artists or, labels or something like that. And, just try to get creative. Like, you really just want to just dive in and do it, I guess. So as far as the processing on the sample goes, so the processing on the drums was like very minimal. I pretty much didn't do anything. I just tried to pick sounds that fit the vibe I wanted. With the sample, I actually did a bit, because if I play it for you dry, it sounds like this. So obviously it's not as like warm and raw sounding. And if you're on like an MPC or something, I think you probably wouldn't have to do a lot of this, because it sort of just happens by the nature of using like, you know, an MPC or hardware. But because I'm using a computer and it sounds very dry, I did all this stuff. So I threw on an auto filter just to cut out some of the top end just right off the bat, just to make it kind of more lo-fi. It's not doing a whole lot, but this resonance is sort of doing something when the a bit warmer, the saturator comes on. So I just used the saturator with the a bit warmer preset, and what that's doing is just sort of making it warmer, and it's bringing out the resonance on this filter a little bit in a nice way. After that, I just put on OTT, which is a famous preset for the multiband dynamics in Ableton. And what that kind of does is it's just like very, OTT stands for over the top. It's just very over the top multiband compression. Like every frequency that isn't like coming out that much is really just getting pulled up as hard as possible. And that sounds like this. I turned the amount down a little bit though. I didn't just put it on full blast. But yeah. After that, I just sidechained it to the kick, just to give it that kind of flow. That's very helpful when doing this. That's like, gives it a really good groove, and sort of makes everything fit together. So after that, I just have this pretty simple bass, which is maybe not the best part of this project file, but I just wanted to put something under it. And this can, I can illustrate something else with this as well. So this bass, as you see, it's the same as the drums I was saying. None of these notes are on the grid. They're all like, and you can see it's just simple 16th notes and stuff. But I moved everything back a little bit. And some of them, it's not like even. Like some of the notes are moved back more than others as well. And so the way I did that was I just had the grid on, and then after I made my pattern, I turned the grid off and just started moving everything around. And yeah, that was pretty much that. It's a pretty simple bass. It's just operator. I think it's like a saw wave with a little envelope filter, or with a little filter with an envelope, and then some reverb and the bass amp, and then I sidechained it to the kick. Not really too much to say there, but what I also want to cover is two more things real quick. So I actually put some processing on the master for this one, and I think that's very important for this style, because you're trying to make all of these sounds sound like they're in the same world, like I always say, but it's very, it's just very, like, it needs to be very pronounced here, and a very good way to do that is to put stuff on the master. Now, as you'll see, what I had to do is, because these are two saturators, two a bit warmers, I had to turn all these tracks down, like, a lot. Like, if you'll see, this one's at minus 19, minus 23.2, minus 26. If you look at the meters when they're playing, they're very low. They're not going up very high. But because the saturators are on here, the overall volume gets to, like, let's see where it hits. Yeah, so like minus 5 or minus 4.57 or whatever. But that's very important with this, is like, you kind of want to think outside of the box a little bit. I mean, I would usually never put anything on my master. I prefer to get the sound just by using, like, things on the individual tracks. I think that's better. But in this case, you're sort of trying to emulate like a tape sound. And if you think about it, a tape, like running, if I ran this through tape, it would be the same as putting this on the master, because that would just be, you know, putting some saturation on the master. So that's why I did that. And you can play around with that, like I said, with this project file. The only other thing I did here was I did this little glitchy part here, which is something that I noticed Flying Lotus has done in a few of his tracks. And all I did was I took this sample from the Folly sound loop. I think it was me making some noise. I was going like, "Bleh," or something. Let me listen. Yeah, it's just this. Yeah, I just stretched out. It's like my voice, but it's stretched out and it's pitched a little bit. And then I just put an erosion on there, and I sidechained to the kick. And what I did was I put on 16th note triplets. If I can do that now real quick. And just went da 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 da. And that's just something cool. The thing about making these beats is like, what Flying Lotus does very well is he makes like a full song out of a beat. So like, sometimes, you know, like when you hear those like lo-fi hip-hop or like beats, chill beats or whatever type things, the songs can only last so long because like there's just not that much going on. It's just like one idea. But what Flying Lotus does very well is he does stuff like what I just showed you, and it makes his tracks like feel like songs even though it's just a beat. And yeah, I just wanted to cover that. So that's pretty much that. Like I said, you know, this project file is in the description. You can mess with it. The samples are in there as well. The MIDI for the bass. And yeah, I hope you guys learned something. I didn't really see any videos about how to do this, so I wanted to cover it. Or any ones that I thought really like covered it properly. So yeah, thanks guys. One more thing. I actually just started a Patreon. It's in the description. There's rewards there's like a few different tiers of donations, but anything you guys can give would be greatly appreciated. And yeah, thank you so much guys. Have a great day, and I hope you learned something. And like and subscribe and share this video and comment. And yeah, thank you so much guys. Have a great day.